Hey guys, so I'm still out here with the M35 doing ancillary tasks to the engine swap, and the project turned into a huge snowball, as I've already told you in a previous video. So I've got pretty much the whole front end of the freaking truck apart, and I want to take this opportunity, since I've got a lot of the paint stripped, to show you some common areas where these trucks rust out and what to look for on your truck if you haven't already, and if you're going to buy a truck. So let's get started. Usually when I approach a truck that I'm looking at for somebody, if they're interested in buying it, the first thing I'll do is I'll walk up on the driver's side, and generally the door, well, sometimes they have the door open so you can look inside, sometimes it's closed. That's not important. First thing I do when I walk up to a truck, I look down here. Now, the rocker panel out here can look solid. First thing you do is stick your hand up under and try to push your fingers up through it. Generally, more often than not, especially if it's a truck up north, your fingers will go through and you'll come out with a handful of rust. So if you feel along here and your rockers are solid, the next place you go is back here. Now, a lot of times these will rust out and people will Bondo over them or fiberglass over them and sand them and paint them. So you want to stick your hand up under. There's a small hollow where you can just get your fingers in and feel along the inside there. And then you can go back a little farther. There's like a diagonal brace here that you can just get your fingers to check about from here to here. And then you can go farther beyond that and check the back of the cab back here where they like to rust out. If that's all good, there's a good chance your truck's probably in pretty good shape. If it's equipped with a hardtop, look at your seams, especially along the back. If you see any kind of peeling or bubbling, the top is probably starting to rust. They're famous for it, and the reason is because there is no kind of body sealer between the sheet metal joints where it is welded to the frame. So you can also check inside by sticking your fingers up on top here and feeling for rust and peeling paint, because the water actually comes in on top of this gasket and then leaches up onto the top of the steel here and starts rusting it out. Same with over here. On the hard tops, the water will run down along, get on top of this channel here, and go in and rust this metal strip from the inside out. And it'll do the same thing. Like, that's just surface rust on mine, but the water leaches up from underneath, gets in between these surfaces where there's no paint, and it'll rust out from the inside out of here. Next place commonly is right here on the quarter panel, and the reason is, if you look right here, now this truck doesn't have any rust. This is factory defects. I didn't know this was here until I stripped the paint off. There's just little bitty pinholes, I guess, from the welding the braces on the back, and I guess they collect moisture, and over time they would bubble the paint here and then rust out. So I'm glad I found this before it actually turned into rust, because it's still solid there. So I don't have an issue. You want to check that. This is right where the fender bolts to it. They love to rust out here because the fenders rub, and they rub the paint off, collect moisture, and they'll rust this whole strip here out with the nuts and everything. Same thing inside right here on the end of the rocker box. So check that too. The other big area that most people miss on the M35 is right up here in front of the windshield on the cowl. Okay, and you can see I've got a couple of pinholes in mine already. But this black is because I OSPO'd it earlier, and then it kind of rained for 10 seconds and turned it all to skeet looking stuff here. I didn't know OSPO did that when it got wet, but come over here, you'll see another spot where I got just a little pinhole there, and that I think is a factory defect. There's no rust there, but you see where it's turned black is where the OSPO is killing rust. And it's not just from the outside in. Okay, let me show you the inside of it. See that right there? They rust from the inside out too, because just from the factory that didn't get really good paint coverage and penetration of that seam. So you get a little moisture in there, and over 40 or 50 years, it starts to rust out. So I've got to take care of that. That's why I pulled the dash out. That, and because I wanted to really get all this up here really well and repaint it. Same thing on this side. You know, you want to check. See, this already, they removed the fender at some point, and they actually had to torch a hole and cut the nut insert out so they could get the fender off because of a little bit of rust. But there's no rust holes. There's no rot here, which is good. So that I'm not worried about. Right here, just above the back corner of the door. If you can, I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see that. See that crack? That's rust from the inside. Now this is a weld seam, a pinch seam. And what happens is, if you look inside here, it's hollow back here in the corner, and they didn't get paint. But they did do some seam sealer. But it collects debris and water back here. And the only place you really can't get it out of, even if you hose it out, is when it gets pushed back in this little weld seam. And it rusts out or cracks right there from corrosion. And it just barely started to do that on the other side too. In fact, just to be sure of that, let me go back around here and, yeah. See that? Just barely starting. So the way I would fix that, I OSFO'd the other side just to keep it from spreading right now while I've got all the paint off. But I'm going to end up taking it, when I get the motor in it, I'm going to take it inside and hit that with a welder and zap it a few times and then grind it smooth and paint it. I'll actually probably put just a small piece of masking tape over right here on both sides, paint the truck, and then when I'm done with everything and I can actually pull it in the shop, I'll address that area. This stuff I'll probably just put some Bondo over, maybe some JB Weld instead of Bondo, because it doesn't hold moisture like Bondo does, and paint over it. I mean, this truck is 50 years old and it hasn't started to rust from that yet. So really, as far as the cab goes, there isn't a lot of other places they're bad about rusting. I mean, you know, you want to check the cowl real well, and what I would suggest is, if you get up here and you're looking at a truck, you know, don't be a dick because you haven't bought the truck yet, but get to the very center and put your fingers on it and just push down. If you see this panel separate from that panel, don't buy the truck. Unless you are ready and willing to do a horrendous amount of sheet metal repair up there, because once you cut into that, ooh, you're in for a hell of a job. So, yeah, I think I've pretty much covered everything. Of course, you want to check the back of the cab at the bottom, like I said, right off at the bat. You can look in here, but this is not going to be rusted out if the bottom down here isn't rusted out, so that's not really a concern. You can look under the seat, look at the back of the cab, but if you've already checked the back on the outside and it's not rusted, this isn't going to be rusted. Unless you got a truck that had an Arctic kit installed and they had the batteries right here under the seat inside at one point. Then it might be susceptible to some inner body corrosion. But those kits were rare. That's something you might run into, like if you buy a truck in Alaska that's been there for a long time. Anyway, I just wanted to share a little bit of knowledge and experience with you about this, you know, body rot rust situation that I've learned from experience over the years, and I hope it's some helpful information for you. And if you like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.